Here's the beginning. As I top out there, I think I'm on top of the ridge itself, so I'll probably have to take that gentler ridge and come up that way. Straight on looks a bit loose, rocky. So it's a little loose. Not too problematic though. Slow and steady. Get me to the top of the ridge right there very shortly. It's usually bare places, a step that are not full of loose rock and gravel that you can easily slip on. And then if it's loose and level, you can still step on it, of course, too. Lots of perch still in bloom, these slopes. Got a Fallujah in the washes. Otherwise, kind of still early spring or not enough precip. Could be both. The perennial cryptanthas are mostly flowering, even though that one looks like crap. They're pretty common here. A lot of aster shrubs in this ecosystem, of course, don't flower till late summer, fall. Some dwarf and ratty Fallujah. They've already flowered and gone to fruit for the most part in this region. Though this looks like these individuals aren't doing either this year, perhaps. Perhaps because they are too dwarf and ratty. Usually, as we know, much larger shrubs, especially when they're found in washes. There's a few in that wash, but not really deep wash. It's near the top of the ridge, so it's not really a harnessing wash level moisture, I'd say. A lot of the pines are pretty poor looking, but maybe they're just babies from individuals like that. Castanea. There's some really tiny Castanea. That's a different species. Anyway, been out here for 2.5 days now. That climb was the first time I didn't wear a jacket. Still wearing long sleeves. Now at the top of the ridge, it is windy and cloudy, and I feel like I'm gonna need to take out the jacket again. So I'm not expecting a significant climb for a while now. Get a view of what the skies are doing up here as well. The higher ranges are all socked in today. Grant Range got a ton of snow. Lower elevations didn't get much precip at all. So there we go. There's the picture, there's the snow. Higher up. Just occasional squalls, it looks like. It's not fully socked in at the moment out there. There are plenty of squalls producing snow and hail and the like. It has turned nasty again in the Mount Irish range. Look at this old piece of evil right here. Old coyote poop here too. Sure, it got a coyote at one point, but looks pretty old. I'm sure those bones are washed downhill by now. Getting some cold sprinkles up here, not enough use to the plants. Lots of Calanthus crassicalis coming back here. Tell by the vestige of last year's growth that very thick and stem. In terms of calling it some local mustards, it's the only one that really gets that thick in diameter. And they appear pretty large when they're actually in the flesh and fleshy. It's the last major rise before something of a drop that I can't really see, and then a climb into the Mount Irish Massif proper. I'm going to use a place called Cold Spring Canyon in the hopes of finding water. For the first time ever at my lost water stash, it had been gnawed into by a local animal. And I've left water out for, 2 weeks plus before without that happening. So that's very unusual. Anyway, I'm low. And I'm noticing a lot of the young pinions and junipers up here are experiencing mortality. So they can't survive these drought conditions this year for the most part. There's one that's okay. There's another juniper that looks like it's pretty much toast because there's a hot, dry summer ahead. And they can really only tolerate so many of those before experiencing infant mortality, let's call it. So I think the juniper establishment depends on a series of at least somewhat decent years. Although the fittest ones may survive. That's kind of in the shade of this pinion. A lot of the adults are not doing too well either, as you can see. So I don't know what's going on up here. A lot of things are dying of drought, clearly. It's hard to say if it's a temporary thing or if this is becoming less and less of a forested elevation over time. Another dead one, pinion. The juniper's dying locally. So it's a mixed scene up here. Shrubbery, on the other hand, seems to be doing just fine for the most part. The shrubbery is better adapted to prolonged droughts. Just the wind alone can tell you that. The more surface area you have to wind desiccation, the more wind desiccation you'll experience. More dead ones. We could be seeing drought-induced selection, of course, which is my primary hypothesis at the moment. The less fit genotypes for surviving drought are dying off. Clearly a lot of other things are sticking around. Could also have to do with soil microclimate conditions, which is a lot harder to get down at. Some genotypes clearly not affected, but maybe it's the rocks that are helping retain more moisture ultimately throughout the seasons, which they do. Could be multiple things going on. Getting closer to Mount Irish. Probably going to depart the highest ridge, head cross-country contour towards the water in the canyon up there. Then I'm going to ascend Cold Spring Canyon. So yeah, it's that way. So not much use for me to keep going this way at this point. go on the ridge, and it's a lot easier to just pass through the gap there and then head that way towards Cold Spring. Keep wanting to call it Cold Creek. I'm not sure there's a creek there necessarily, since I haven't encountered running water in this range yet. Past that beautiful bump there. Still on the ridge. And, you know, getting close to the spring. I hope it's a scenic canyon for us all. I had anticipated more of a chaparral here, as would be more characteristic of the moderate Mojave elevations, and I'm pleasantly surprised to find it a very traversable, very navigable pinyon juniper savanna, with plenty of sagebrush too, of course. And this ridge was a great walk. About to complete this first part of it and try to navigate the way upwards towards Mount Irish, which I'll summit in the morning, I suppose. The first onion of the season. Didn't really see much of onions last year, so hopefully start to see more. Things are looking generally a lot healthier the closer I get to Mount Irish, though there are exceptions, of course. Kind of confirms, being closer to Mount Irish, that drought is probably the primary factor affecting those juveniles back there. Yeah, I mean, the further you get from the higher mountain, the less precip there is. That's a fact. Something's always gonna die of old age still. And maybe drought will facilitate an earlier death in that case too. Don't I know that well about old age, because I just turned a new age yesterday. That one, for example, got pretty big, for these parts at least. Place is so wildernessy that, and hasn't burned in such a long time, that we are just seeing what the natural landscape looks like. There's very, very little evidence of horses or cows up here, and certainly no roads or anything. So yeah, things are naturally gonna die, but to see all those juveniles dead, that was the unusual thing, wasn't it? Quite a glorious scene ahead. Day is cleared out significantly. I'm betting tomorrow morning will be very clear, though I'm not sure. Descended greatly to get this vantage point. Not greatly, maybe 500 feet, to go to at least check out Cold Spring and to find its tributary, which goes up to a higher spring, so I can stock up for the rest of the trip. That higher spring is right below the summit. Lots of berberis in this new wash. Going up to Mount Irish up there. I saw there are two places labeled Cold Spring on the GPS. I'm suspecting this one was mislabeled. Seems pretty dry. And I don't see anything in the area where the spring is supposed to be. But worry not. There is Shingle Spring above, and even another possible spring before I run out, so not in trouble. There is indeed a well-worn line of trail of hoof prints suggesting that there is indeed water up ahead, and suggesting it will indeed be all trampled up. No indications of any yet. Very dry wash still, as with all drainages in this entire mountain range so far that I've been to. Just continuing up the same wash slash canyon, up which is Shingle Spring. So good night for now. See the spring in the morning either way, whatever it may be. Evidence of a spring in the form of ponderosas, moss walls, no standing water, so I may have to bail at Reed Spring and go home if I'm out of water. Maybe there'll be some up canyon still, we'll see. No high hopes though, despite those pondos. Not a good sign for the next spring if this high north-facing shelter drainage isn't producing. Maybe it will above the spring, but I doubt it. Looks like the ponderosas are here. And I'm getting close to the top of the ridge. Rather large ponderosas, still all dry ground, even after those storms. Really not a good sign. Might explain the comparative lack of horses and such out here. The lack of water. Even after a spring storm, this gully is dry. Cool, north-facing and shaded, but nonetheless dry. And you can imagine it'll remain that so all summer at least. Still very early spring, above 8,000 here. One thing going for me is that it's quite brisk up here, with a decided chill to the breeze that is prevalent. It's a penstemon and pedicularis just leafing out. Petrodoria as usual, as we'd expect in dry rocks, not wet gullies, which is what this was supposed to be in some sense. It's full on ponderosa woodland still, these highest, most sheltered north-facing slopes. Quite a savanna. Looks pretty bare up there, and I see some old burn scars over there, so these were spared whatever fire. And whatever fire may have had the effect of blocking off the spring for good, who knows. Still seeing some occasional gooseberries in flower. We'll really study those someday, comparatively speaking. They come in unarmed and armed varieties, and I'm seeing both. Up here the vegetation is more windswept, more forming cushions and mats and such. There are towers and infrastructure up here, which I had seen from below, but which is nonetheless strange for such a wildernessy place. That's a sub-peak of Mount Irish called Sanderson, I think. There's Irish proper. On top of Sanderson. Definitely a very unique flora up here, either way. even be worth a return visit slightly later, because I'm not seeing a ton of it in flower. Got Brony and Nana. Some of it's in flower, but again, if it is, it looks like crap for the most part because of the snow and frost. I definitely had ice last night. Ones that haven't flowered yet, though, are probably going to thrive, like that one. Saw fritillaria. There's all kinds of interesting and unique pseudo-dwarf, pseudo-cushion plants up here, too. That is a balancing act of living up here, of course. As spring starts, you may be subject to snow and frost. And then there's heat and drought, not far behind. So they don't get very big unless you're shrubs. And these Cercocarpus latifolius, which we know to be much bigger, are not all that tall in stature either, are they? More of a spreading than a heightening form. So, things that are well adapted to tolerating such pressures can't get very big usually. In terms of herbaceous growth, of course. Clearly, we're seeing lots of larger woody growth up here. There's an arch up here. Very interesting place overall, I'd say. Between the cushion plant growth and the challenging geology. That is a dwarf ponderosa, looking something like one of the white pines. Very much has the form of a limber or white pine. Imagine that's a solar panel, but that's a strange object as well. It's a big plate of nothing up here. Based on the proximity to Area 51 and all the jets I've been hearing, on weekdays at least. Could be military related. Extremely odd. It's a towering structure. It's, bigger than a 3-story building. Using the ruggedest, rockiest parts to get up there and almost there. It's a descent to the pass now. It is in fact flowering, but the flowers are so minute and apetalous that we can't really tell with this camera. You can see a little bit flowering in the apices there. Try to point it out. There's a flower, for example, right there. Here's the habitat. This outcrop, pretty much only here so far. And on that outcrop too. They're probably pretty common along this whole ledge. Lots of beautiful Enothera greening up. And there it is. Anyway, I think the water's in that gulch. I need to check on the map first and then check if there's actually water present and make a big decision from there. It's not really my decision, is it? It's a bit warm today, walking uphill. Nice brisk breeze still. I just crossed the pass, continuing along the ridge line. And the spring is just off of the ridge line less than a mile ahead. And it'll make or break the rest of the trip. No doubt about it. We've got less than a gallon. Quite a bit less than a gallon now. Which means I wouldn't even be able to cook tonight. Never mind drink anything tomorrow. So I'm still quite a bit ways away from, too far away from water I've stashed at the end of the range. It's a formidable cliff system that I came down. It's hard to find a way down that, and it is marked with a cairn. Pretty much the only place. I bet climbers go up there once in a while. It's a worthy peak. It is a wee bit protected, like an Irish fortress. I'll be walking into those heights ahead either way, for some stretch either way. The spring is supposed to be down and to the left up here. It's right off the ridge apparently. It's the headwaters of Logan Creek is what it's called. It's hard to imagine flowing water out here. It's probably in that gap right ahead of me somewhere. Wish us luck! Supposed to be just a few feet below there. Hard to imagine, but cross my fingers. It is brutally barren. So that seals the fate on the traverse. It won't be a full traverse, it'll be a partial traverse. Not even a grove of willows or anything to check out. Nothing even hinting that it was once wetter here. It is so limestoney here, after all, that surface water would be hard to come by no matter what. Limestone filters water through quickly. Water finds a way through limestone quickly. Better way to put it. So it doesn't really lend itself to springs. I'm not sure what's going on, if it's the dry year after other dry years. They were poor springs in the first place, maybe labeled dry on newer maps, I don't know. It is what it is. It'll still be a high Mount Irish range traverse, because when I bail at the Reed Springs Road, it's mostly down from there towards the road. It'll be about a 2/3 of a range traverse. Back in the land of young juniper death, in any case, as well. Which tells you how dry it is. So I'm not making it up. No water means zero evidence of horses or their trails. Just continuing up and down bumps of the ridge. Just a mile or two to Reed Springs drainage. So this trip will be unexpectedly cut short pretty momentarily here. Maybe the last climb right there. Looks like a steep one. I had a feeling it would take the rest of the day to get there. Reed Springs drainage. May even be dark when I'm walking down the road in there. At the same time, I think that's the last major climb in front of me. There may be a couple more subsidiary bumps beyond there. Nothing too significant compared to that though, which is going to be at least a 500-foot climb, it looks like. It's got this dip and then a second dip first. It's so bad that even after that snow and rain, mosses are brown up here. Dang. Sure has been a tough and winding and bumpy way here, even with a light pack. I think that's the final major bump at least. On Irish. Very, very distant now. Top of the bump above. One more smaller dip, one more smaller climb, and then somewhere off of that ridge, which looks pretty flat compared to what I've just been through. I'm moving along quickly now. I was hoping to see if there's water at Reed Springs before full darkness, that is. Plus side of another bum precip year is lack of biting insects. Skies are becoming a little too pretty because I'm out of time. I'm still up here. But this is the very last incline in front of me. And on the other side of this, just on the other side, a few 100 feet lower or so, maybe a little more, is Reed Springs Road, way out. It'd be nice to know if there's water there. I'm gonna doubt it though. So just this little one first, it's a little bit rugged. The time's running out. Limestone's gone. It's all volcanic now, so there could be water at Reed Springs. It's time to descend and find out. Time to go down that way. Alright, so it's at the bottom of this ridge, the immediate bottom of it. Really not that far away. Where this ridge and my current ridge meet at a wash. Supposed to be the spring there. I will come back here someday, months from now, and finish all this up. So it's going to be a spatial and a temporal, how about that? Separation between the Mount Irish Range Traverse days. Probably be back here in the fall actually. And just to finish up this section and then to walk from Hancock to scout something else. So, see you then. Thought I'd also mention before we go that I'm down to my very last gulp of water. No doubt about that. Far less than half a liter, so gotta do this.